Hello, welcome to our program. I'm Joe Condon, and we are delighted to have with us this week Jennifer Vitkus, who is the Program Director of the Addictions Care Center of Albany. And what we're talking about this week is something which is impacting families all across New York State, whether you're in Buffalo, Syracuse, or Albany, and actually families all across the nation. Cyberbullying. And as you know, in the news the past year and a half, it's resulted in the deaths of some kids who have taken their own lives because of cyberbullying. And Jennifer Vitkus, Program Director of the Addictions Care Center of Albany, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Joe. Nice to be here.
Now, we all grew up, were subjected to bullies, either in the neighborhood or in grammar school or high school or even college. What is your definition of a bully, and why does one become a bully?
A bully is somebody who repeatedly harasses somebody, whether it's a physical form, a social form, or an emotional. And now we're seeing higher results of students that are being bullied through the internet, through text messaging, and that's where we see cyberbullying taking such a precedence right now in our society.
What is your definition of cyberbullying?
Cyberbullying is when somebody, once again, repeatedly harasses a person by intimidation, whether it's through pictures, whether it's through text messages, whether it's through social isolation and posting something negative about a person, or even using their sign-on information in a negative way.
That's almost a form of stalking, which existed before the internet.
Absolutely, Joe. And there is, when cyberbullying does come into play, we do see there's a situational pattern where cyber stalking is actually something when it continuously happens. And with cyberbullying, to have that definition, it has to be a student-to-student contact. As soon as we bring in an adult's a perpetrator of cyberbullying, then it turns into cyber stalking. What
motivates someone? You would think they would have more going on in their life, that they would focus in on an individual, either on the net or off the net, and want to bully them or make life unpleasant for them.
I think a lot of times with the students that we've seen, and we've worked with both a victim and both the bullying person, I think they are showing signs of anger, frustration. It's a type of social outlet for them where, you know, physical to physical, face-to-face bullying, you know who that individual is. You know what, you can see their reaction. When somebody uses the computer or other means of communication via the internet, via technology, they don't have that face-to-face, so they feel more superior, where they can actually define and you know, really hurt somebody in a different, more devastating way, I think.
And also too, with the internet, a lot of times, because of a web address you create, you can, unless somebody technically researches it, hide behind that and pretend to be someone you're not.
Pretend to be somebody you're not. Act as, you know, an adult male. Act as an adult. You know, depending on that situation, there's so many different ways to distinguish and to hide that person's identity. And when we talk to students about cyberbullying, we really give them factual information about how they should never share a password. They should always sign on in a safe environment. When they're using their home computer, making sure it's in an area where, you know, parents can kind of walk by and monitor that too. With cell phones, because just about every teenager you're going to see has a cell phone, making sure that they don't post any kind of negative pictures with themselves, and making sure also with the text messaging that they know anything that's sent or anything that's received is printable information. Same thing with internet. Any kind of emails that are sent, any type of web chatting, you can have access to that and be able to print that off if somebody's continuously harassing you. And we just let them know that there's information out there to help them.
If someone is engaged in cyberbullying or has the potential for it, if you're a parent, grandparent, or a school teacher, or even a friend, maybe an adult in the neighborhood, what are some of the signs? Some
of the signs: social isolation, just with the regular form of bullying, somebody who's acting out or maybe feeling intimidated. You want to have that open conversation. When you see somebody on the computer and then you see a negative message pop up, as a parent, making sure that they can identify how detrimental that information could be, and just knowing to openly talk about, well, who are you talking to? You know, is that a friend from school? What have they said to you? If there's a picture that's been posted, whether it be via the cell phone or via the internet, knowing that that parent has that right to get that information. It's printable information where they can bring, if need be, to law enforcement.
Now, bullying, you described it to me as a learned behavior. Do you learn that from your parents?
You know, I think within our society right now, kids have lost that respect on how to treat one the way that you want to be treated. And whether it's not necessarily learned from home, but I think it's just, you know, you always get the saying, oh, that's just kids being kids. You know, kids are going to be mean to each other. But when it starts to happen repeatedly and you see this harassment, then as an adult, whether it be in the school environment, whether it be in the home environment, it's really important to identify if somebody is really using negative, nasty words all the time, really targeting an individual for whether it be their social class, whether it be their religion, ethnicity. That's where a student needs to understand this is harmful and this is dangerous, and you're not treating that person in respect.
I'm going to turn to your student guide to cyberbullying. What is flaming?
Flaming is when somebody outlashes on somebody and really talks negative about them in a repeated manner.
The impersonation is something very dangerous.
Impersonation is what we talked about with that adult woman when they sign on as somebody else just to harm another individual.
Outing, that's really bad.
That is, and that's when you're outcasting somebody socially and you're leaving them out of groups, and that's another way to really harm somebody ineffectively and not in a safe manner. Also, too, you indicated in this book that it's if someone confides, like we all confide in people, and you expect it won't go any further, and then someone turns around and puts it on the web. That's very hurtful as well. Very hurtful, and that's where we see a lot of these negative pictures, negative postings, and that's what's really important to let kids know. Do not give that password out to anybody. You know, if you don't leave that station if you're signed on, because that's an avenue for somebody to turn and sign on in their name and write and post negative things. The trickery is tricking somebody into saying something or doing something in a negative way. And exclusion. Leaving somebody out, making sure, you know, they're not, same with social exclusion with regular forms of bullying, leaving that person out and not including them or social grouping. Now in your whole booklet here, you really have an entire section devoted to not giving power to the bullies. How do you give bullies power? By responding back, by letting that person know that it's bothering you, that they see that way that you're acting. If you ignore and don't respond back immediately, it's really going to make that bullier really think about responding again. So we try to get them to understand, students to understand that it's not safe to send back a message. It's hard to ignore because it does bring up a lot of feelings and a lot of issues, but if they can go and talk about it, whether it be with another friend, another adult, and then tell that person, you know what, this is bothering me, stop. And be strong and show that self-confidence and that high level of self-esteem, and have that safe person, that older adult that you can talk to about anything to make them feel safe. Now legislatively, I know some parts of New York State we have anti-cyberbullying legislation. Have people been prosecuted for that? Not yet, not to my knowledge. Except for that woman who. And yeah, and that was back in a different state a couple of years back. But that's really when I think it started to show precedence that this was actually going to be a problem, and we needed to change that. And I think with our county, Albany County, starting and taking the forefront to pass a legislative law, same with the parents who host a social host legislation, it's going to be similar to that if a parent knows this is happening, they're going to be responsible for not only, you know, a court fee, but also some monetary fees too. What can a parent do about, they're finding that their child is being cyber bullied? What would you recommend to parents? I would recommend talking to the local school administrators, the school resource officers or the technology officers in the school district, but also bringing up you can go to your law enforcement, because that's where you want to have that proof. Print out those messages. And it wouldn't hurt to actually, if you know, to talk to the other parent of that child too, to kind of address the situation before it can be a devastating situation. Also too, you could have a situation, you talked about going to schools where there is someone who is engaged in cyberbullying, who might be someone who lives in the neighborhood or a friend of someone's that's doing the bullying on
their behalf, I guess law enforcement is the only place to go then?
I would say your local law enforcement, and let them understand and have that documentation. Print those messages out, save those texts. Everything is traceable.
Right. But why are people doing that? I mean, it seems there are so many things you have to worry about.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're an adult or a kid.
A sense of power, having that power to make somebody feel inferior, feeling superior against somebody else. Maybe they're not getting that information. They're not feeling that sense of security at home. So they might feel that they need to outlash in this type of way, this type of behavior. And, just for a laugh, they want to fit in with other groups too. They want to be the cool one.
And one thing you have been stressing over and over, and I want to just mention it again because it's so difficult to hold yourself back, never retaliate.
Never retaliate. And just if you can get that message across and have that conversation, just know it's going to be devastating if you just can't. If you can learn to step back, think about that, process that message, and then really talk to somebody about it. Don't let it go unnoticed. We
have a few moments left before the end of the program, and I think we pretty much handled cyberbullying. As Program Director of the Addictions Care Center of Albany, what is the main role of your organization besides, getting people
We
off
have
cyber?
a fairly large organization. I'm the director of the Community Education and Training Program, and we're responsible to go out into the community and host a whole bunch of different prevention programs, starting from kindergarten right up into college, working with parents in a family program. And then we also have an outpatient clinic where we service Albany County clients. We have a residential program where we have men who are going through their treatment programs. We have a crisis center, and then we also are in the process of developing a women's and children's center to address women who need treatment when they can where they'll be able to keep their kids with them.
And that is something, as you said, your organization was founded by Father Peter Young, and I know he has a similar situation at one of his facilities where parents are getting straight again and are able to stay with their children. That's very important to keep the families together.
Very important to keep the families together, especially when they're in that recovery process, that treatment process. You want to make sure they keep that bond with their child, and having the opportunity to work on their treatment while their children are still with them not only helps the child because of that attachment, but also helps the parent too.
What advice do you have for parents or family members that have someone going through addiction as far as a coping skill? To
talk to somebody, to attend the support groups, to really learn what addiction is and how it can be prevented. When we work with our younger populations, we really want to prevent any of these behaviors from happening. So if you know of somebody who might have an addiction, just reach out, talk to somebody, and really get them the help that they need. Because in order to do that, that person is going to have to stop on their own. They can't be forced into it. But just know that it is a disease and it can be prevented.
As we have about a minute left in the show, and getting back to the main topic of the program, cyberbullying, I think something which is also very important for someone who is being cyberbullied is for them to realize that it's not them. This is happening to a lot of good people. A lot of good people. And there's surveys out there that 40 to 50% of our 9th through 12th graders have experienced this in some form. So I think it's a topic that we're going to see more of. And if we learn to address it earlier rather than later, hopefully we can stop something negative from happening. Jennifer Vitkus, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, Joe. Jennifer Vitkus, the Program Director of the Addictions Care Center of Albany. I am Joe Condon. Have yourself a wonderful day, and don't bully anybody, please.